Hi, everyone. I'm Ilona Varo. Thank you for tuning in for the Thrive Through the Holidays podcast. I'm joined here with a colleague and good friend of mine, Elizabeth Giselle, and we're going to be talking about how to be present this holiday season. I love the idea, playing on the word present. That was amazing point of view. And that's often feedback that we get is, oh my gosh, the holidays are gone. It flew by. I wasn't present at all. So, we're going to dive into ways of being embodied in our body, present, mindful. But before we do that, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little intro of who you are and what your work encompasses.
Thank you so much, Ilona, for having me here. I'm very happy to be here to discuss being present in the holidays. Oftentimes, we're focused on the presents we're giving, but not actually being present. So it's wonderful to dive into that. I am an LMFT, and I specialize in um, trauma, also eating disorders, sex therapy, couples, and somatic work. So this is under the umbrella of what I love working with. And I'm excited to share some tips for people as they navigate the holiday season.
Amazing. Yeah, let's just dive right into it. So, I think a lot of times I have my clients feeling disconnected from their body. They feel very ungrounded. There's always like a sense of chaos and rushing and feeling triggered, especially around the holiday season. So, how do you like to approach this idea of being present, being in our bodies when there's so many external influences that kind of want to take us out of the moment. There's just so many things that the holidays bring up for us. We,
Yes.
we will go into detail, but how do you like to approach this idea even? Because it kind of sounds like a too good to be true tactic.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. And there's multiple tactics, and there's not a one size fits all. Every human being is different, and their bodies are going to experience things different. So if I share a tip or some kind of practice, someone may try it and say, that doesn't really work for me." But the other one, hey, that one was my jam. So that's okay to try things and see what works for your body. One thing is like an overview when you talk about the holiday season being really chaotic, people just like rushing through it. I think that often partially is because there's so much pressure. And there's like this societal expectations of like, oh, this is what the holiday season's supposed to look like. And I think it's important. This is not even this is not a somatic exercise, but this is like more of a values exercise to recognize and really like go within what is of value to me, right? Not what society is telling me. Okay. That might look the same as a societal norm, or it may
Mm-hmm.
not. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can use myself as an example. I go all out very large for Christmas every other year. And it's the year I have my son. And I do matching pajamas and I get really into it. Now, the year I do not have my son, because we have every other holiday with my former spouse. And what I do is I go on a trip, and I'm usually taking a nap on Christmas Day. I'm usually like resting, cleaning the house, but I'll go on a big trip beforehand. I might be on an airline on Christmas Day, but my Christmas looks very, very different. So it's not trying to match any particular ideal that may be projected onto me. It's matching what is good for my heart and soul based on the context of my life. And what's good for me is to go all out when I have my kid and to travel and be low key on Christmas Day when I don't have him. And there's not really a wrong or right for it, but that's
Mm-hmm.
right for me. I'm using it as an example because people can create what's right for them. Do they have to go to that particular holiday event? If it will serve them and bring them joy, then great. If it will make them exhausted, they really don't have to be there. Like it's okay to like have a to-do list and also a not to-do list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I love that kind of comparison because so often when we know what we don't want, that helps us point out what we do want. And
Mhm.
I think just in my work, I'm sure you come across it too, anyone with a history of trauma or even disordered eating or anything like that, there is a disconnect from ourselves. And so sometimes when you ask someone, well, what do you want or what do you value? It can bring up a freeze response. They have no idea or it's really difficult to access. And so I love that kind of comparison that, okay, if even if you don't know what you want or what you do value, let's try to juxtapose it against what you know you don't want or you don't
Oh,
value.
100%. One of the exercises I like to do when I'm not sure about making a decision is you can sit down like on a meditation bolster, or you can lay in your bed, just close your eyes and envision both scenarios and see what sits right for you or see what sits better. It may not be one that's like, oh, I absolutely love that one. It's really obvious, but there might
Mhm.
be one that like really sits not so good.
Mhm.
Like I envisioned that and I did not like that. So then feel it, and when you're closing your eyes, you're tapping into paying attention to what the sensations of your body, letting
Yeah.
your body speak to you, because there is wisdom in our bodies. And if we don't listen to it, it will scream and manifest in other ways that are not going to serve our best interest. So to be able to just kind of like drop in, and breathing and just listening to what it's saying, our bodies will give us a lot of information.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a hard practice if you're unfamiliar with it on how to listen to our internal wisdom. Like you
Yes.
said, our bodies are always trying to communicate with us. But if you're out of practice or you've never been taught the skill, it can be initially frustrating. Or I think that's when people are like, oh, it didn't work for me or it doesn't work for me. So I love that you started this whole conversation by saying, try out a few things and see what resonates and what doesn't. And especially, I know we were talking just before hopping on here, the term somatics is thrown around so much on social media. Literally, like somatic healing, somatic exercise, somatic therapy, somatic, like it is absolutely a legitimate, valuable tool. But just be mindful of, how you're approaching it. Even just hearing the term, does it kind of turn you off? Or are you curious about it? Or did you try one type of somatics and that didn't work for you, and now therefore you're writing the whole thing off? So give us a little idea of what somatics is, how it applies to what we're talking about here.
Sure. Okay. So, when it comes to mental health and being integrated in our body, there's different kinds of approaches. One of them is like a top-down approach. That's more like cognitive behavioral therapy, working on our thoughts, positive thinking, things of that nature. And that serves people quite well. I'm not putting that down. That's definitely part of the holistic healing. Um, but at the same time, if it's just top down, we're really missing the bottom up approach. And that's the concept that our body is consistently speaking to our mind. I mean, we've talked about, I'm sure your listeners have talked about the mind body gut connection too.
Absolutely.
That's
All
very
day,
much
every
there.
day.
Yeah, yeah. So it's all connected. And the thing is our body, it's kind of like a young child. If a young child is listened to, like tended to, like they have a call, they have a cry, and they're tended to, then they're like, okay, I'm safe, going to be tended to, right? Now, if they're not tended to, they may have their cry louder. Now, our bodies are very similar, so it may show up as an anger outburst. What happened? What? That's unlike me. Why did I go off like that? Or road, like being a little bit of road rage on the road, and someone's like, That's not me. How's that coming up like that?" Right? Or it may come up somatically as like a skin condition or constipation, or like there's so many different ways that it can come up. But then at the same time, if we still continue to not listen, what happens is our bodies, like an example of a child, they'll get to a point where they'll stop crying. They'll stop trying. Because the body's like, you're not listening to me. I'm just going to resign. And that's when it really shuts down.
Mm.
And oftentimes that's the state. If somebody has a history of trauma, sometimes for them to survive through that trauma, they have disassociated and not listened to their bodies so they can survive. And and during those times, that can be a time where it's harder to connect in one's body after that disconnect has happened.
Mhm.
So there are certain practices to help us drop back in. And I'd like to share some of those practices. So,
Beautiful.
okay, do you want to just dive in?
I love applicable tools. I
Okay,
think the
cool.
audience
Okay.
does too. So let's dive in.
Okay, I'm really into this too, and I'm really into the science too. I'm really like to nerd out on like brain science. So let's talk about just breath. You hear about this a lot, mindful breathing. Now, why is it helpful? Well, one thing we know, scientists have found that our inhalation and our exhalation is connected to our nervous system. When we inhale, that's connected to our sympathetic nervous system. That's the nervous system that is our fight, flight, freeze, and appease. Some people say fawn. Those different responses. Those are like when we're going through something that's stressful and we need to get through it. Now, when we breathe in, it's connected to our sympathetic system. So it actually, our heart rate actually does a temporarily rise when we breathe in. And when we breathe out, that's when the vagus nerve secretes a transmitter. It's called acetylcholine. I said wrong. Acetylcholine. And when it gives that transmitter, it actually helps our body to rest and to calm. Because we know this, we can, if we're mindfully breathing and we take more time to exhale than inhale, we can actually like kind of hack our brains and our nervous system to create more of that transmitter that will help our body to be calm. This is like a state of rest, the feeling of safety, helps with digestion. It also helps with decision making because it can help us get into our frontal lobe and our cognitive thinking, like our executive type thinking. So people are kind of like, why am I breathing? Why am I focusing on breath? Well, it's actually literally changing how your body is functioning inside and being able to get us down like into our bodies. So if
Yes.
you're feeling more anxious, you're feeling more frustrated, irritable, I don't really get why. And then like the breathing might also be irritating too. Like here I am and here I'm breathing. Like what
Great
is
point.
this? Like what is, and like, and then also our brain can start thinking like, is this really work? Is this psychobabble? Like, well, what's going on? But trying it, I would just say just trying, just just breathing in and then just being mindful with a slower breath. And this is something you can do even if you're with other people. You don't have to tell them you're doing it. You can do
Yeah.
it, yeah. But like if
Yeah.
there's a moment, like you're at a holiday party and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on being able to breathe out a bit slower than breathing in. And you can extend the exhale and continue to extend it longer and longer, which we feel comfortable with. Another way of dropping in is two different grounding techniques that I'll share. One that's really common, a lot of people are aware of, is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That one, I'm sure you're aware of it. That one is the five, when you're in a place where you might have a heightened sense of activation in your nervous system, noticing 5 things that you see in the room, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. That's when a lot of people like doing, and it kind of gets you in the here and now and gets you
Hmm.
present in the moment. One that I really like, and the reason why I like this other one is because sometimes with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, if I'm really activated, I actually forget which one's what.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm like, okay, I'm really activated. Like I don't have like what is the 5? What's the 4? This is even worse. So that can happen for me. So for those that might be like myself, that when you're in an activated place, you may need something that's a bit more simpler. I like doing I call it rainbow grounding. And what I do is I start from the red on the rainbow and then go work my way down to orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And then if I need to continue to go, I may go to pink and black and white. And what you do is when you're in that space, you're going to notice everything in around you that is that color. So I might be like red. Okay. Um, the stapler is red. Or like that, that bow is red. My nails are
Yeah,
red.
I was just gonna
Um,
say your nails are red.
um,
Holidays much?
holidays, there you go. So, and then you would go down, and this I've seen this work for others. This is one that I personally like a lot. I always like using examples because I think they're helpful. I don't mind using my own personal examples. I had really disorienting, horrible news when I was at the hospital. And when I got the news, I felt disoriented from my body. I felt like not even in the time or space, felt completely dissociated. And I needed to get back to like being present. And I used rainbow grounding in the room. And I worked my way all the way down through. And there was actually a lot of different things of different colors. And I will say after I got through the rainbow, I was back in my body.
Mm.
So that also may be something that can help others. Another thing that can really be helpful is physical touch. Physical touch is so powerful. It can be powerful in regards to connection with another person that you love in a consensual way, but it also can be physically touching yourself. Like you have a relationship with yourself. So one thing that one thing that I like to do, and I suggest for others to try, is if you're feeling an activation of emotion, you can put your hand on your chest. Some people also like to put their hand on their abdomen as well. So both.
Hmm.
You can, so if you just feel comfortable with just the chest, that's okay too. You can also do the abdomen if you feel comfortable with that as well. And when you're holding that space, being present with what's coming up and just paying attention to what's coming up and having and envisioning compassion and acceptance coming through your hand with whatever it is. So it's not about whatever is coming up. We're not trying to change it. We're not trying to judge it.
Mm.
We're letting it be and being there for it. So it's kind of similar, like for instance, like we talked about the science of like another person empathetically being there for another person can create such healing.
Yep.
We can also empathetically be there for ourselves and cause such healing, and be
Hmm.
there for our bodies and cause such healing. Like, I hear you. This morning I did this exercise and I felt a tinge of sorrow in my chest. And it made sense. Today is the birthday of an aunt who passed, and I miss her. So it
Mm.
makes sense. I didn't actually, I'll tell you, Ilona, I didn't even really feel the buzz before I dropped in. I was
Mm.
just going about my day, doing the things I need to do. And
Yeah.
then when I held my heart, like, oh, that's there. It
Mm.
makes sense that's there because today is that day. So I would carry that peace, right? So being able to drop into our bodies and honoring what is, not trying to change it or judge it, but just being there for it, being there for
Yeah.
yourself. Um,
Yeah.
and sometimes our bodies are also gonna say something to ourselves like, you need to take a nap, or you need to do less, or you need to dance, or you like there's different things that that may come up. But that's like a helpful, that could be a helpful practice. Another piece that I like to do is mindful movement. And mindful movement can look like taking a walk, it can be a stretch, it could be dancing. Um, and mindful movement is not something where you're like trying to do a dance routine, like you're in a pom pom squad or on a music video or at a dance club. You're not like, it's not to do a cool dance move. All right.
Yeah.
It is to really honor what your body wants at that moment. Okay. So it
Not what it looks like.
not what it looks like exactly. And so so I mean when I see patients, I actually do one mindful movement exercise for myself after every session, and I
Okay.
do that because it helps the body process. I can have my mind process, because as a therapist you're holding space for others. You're also having that experience that your body is still going to be affected, and so being able to process it physically. And when it comes, I can show you, like, I like to give examples because you can say something, can like look, like do something this way, but it's like harder to understand it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'm like, oh, I'm right here. Hey, let's say I'm going to do a mindful movement right now. I don't know what it's going to look like because you don't pre-plan it. Okay. I'm just going to pay attention to what my body wants and then do that. It may look awkward. And if it does, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going
Yeah.
to just give an example.
Okay.
Okay. So right now I feel like my calves are really tight. And so I feel like I want to stretch them. And then my body just naturally wants to hang just like this. I go back and forth and then get a little shake. Oh, I like to do this when I do mindful movement. I like to put music on often.
Hmm.
But I'm just like right now at this moment, I just did whatever felt good. I don't really know
Yeah.
what that looked like, but I did it because at the moment it felt like what my body needed.
Yeah.
And this, if you've never done this kind of practice, the more you do it, the more comfortable it can feel. At first, it might feel weird. Like I just like walked around like some kind of animal, or you can
Yeah.
also make sounds. And
Yeah.
they might have like a roar that comes out or a howl. I've had times where I'm like, oh, I don't know
I
what I'm
love it.
doing.
Well, even that shifts the energy, right? Like a lot of times
Yes.
people resist. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to because I don't want to look stupid." But if you're stuck or frozen or feeling depressed or any of these things, maybe feeling like you might look stupid is an improvement from, on this range of emotion.
Yes.
Looking like, you might be judging how you look. Judgment is maybe better than depression, right? Like, so it could be up the scale in some way. So
True. And also, if we have that judgment and then we experience it and then we survive it and we're okay,
you're building your
also
resilience.
shift things
Yeah,
to create, I mean, I'll tell you, I definitely, I've had my own journey, and I've definitely been the person I was very shy growing up. I was very, very aware of like how anyone responded to anything. And so it's been a journey myself. But when I first started working with mindful movement, I may have had that internalized voice, and it still
of course,
sometimes comes up even
for
now.
sure, for sure.
As human beings, we do that. Even when I did that moment, I was like, I don't, okay, here I go. But at the same time, and this is something you can do your mindful movement alone too, if you feel more comfortable.
Yeah,
Um, so you don't have any eyes on you. And I have a dog and a cat, so they may see mama move in all kinds of ways, but
they'll usually join in.
they're like, okay, sounds good. But that movement, that somatic movement, is really helpful for the body to process experiences. Now, if somebody has a larger trauma in their past, that would be more like work with a therapist. But this can even help for like little T traumas, like just little
Yeah,
stressors throughout the day.
yeah, yeah,
So I do recommend, if you can do it throughout the day in little spurts, or if you can't, just at the end of the day, having a period of time where you honor movement in your body. It may be stretching, it may be self massage, it may be um dance. And sometimes you just might be really tired, you just need to rest, and like, you know what,
yeah,
I'm not gonna do that today. That's okay too, right?
yeah.
um
But
but
even shavasana, right? Lay on the
yeah,
ground in
Shavasana,
that.
yeah, just having that, just
That is a
just
position
being.
to take
That is
also.
exactly, and I've
Yeah,
done that before. Where I'm like, this
yeah,
is what I need, and that's what my body, and I'm honoring what my body needs at that time.
yeah.
And so there's different ways of honoring what your body needs.
Beautiful.
Another piece that I think is really helpful is, well, we all know about the art of gratitude. We know that that makes people happier in general if we
Yeah,
lean into gratitude. So having a gratitude journal, sometimes people just like to put notes on their phone so they don't have like a full journal, but like on your phone, you can like just have a note of like different things we're grateful for, or you can say it out loud.
yeah,
Um, at the same time, sometimes with positive psychology, I think it's really helpful, but it also can be harmful, because with positive psychology, sometimes people will feel shame if they're not feeling so positive. And
yeah,
sometimes there's things in life that you don't feel that positive, and it's hard
yeah,
to feel that way. So when that comes up, I would recommend honoring, instead of like trying to push down a feeling that doesn't feel so good, like sadness or
yeah,
anger. I would get curious about it, because all of our emotions are gifts. All of our emotions are our bodies trying to express something, give us information. That's what it is. And like, for instance, like the emotion of anger is one of my favorite emotions. One of the reasons why I always thought it was like bad growing up. I was like, oh, you're so bad.
yeah,
And I don't,
yeah,
but I always associated it with anger is yelling or anger is violence, but it really isn't. Yelling and violence, that is something, and so women making a choice, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's not anger. Anger, actually, oftentimes it's like information to give us information that maybe there's an injustice, or maybe a boundary violation, or maybe
yeah,
we're neglecting ourselves in some way.
yeah.
So there's so many different, there's like insights that we can get.
It's
Um,
always information.
right? It's
Yeah,
information. And it's
yeah,
like, how can I take this information and utilize it working within within my realm of control for
yeah,
good for
definitely.
myself and good for mankind, good,
Yeah,
overall.
yeah,
So I think like, positive psychology and like leaning into gratitude and those positive pieces is also really helpful. But then also you can have and or I mean
you can take
have
anything
the
to
and
the extreme.
yeah, you can also have the, I'm gonna honor some of these pieces by being curious
Yeah,
and um moving into what I can do, what kind of agency I have in my life to make
yeah,
shifts that make things better.
yeah,
Um Another thing,
I just want to be mindful of the time, though. I know you have a
oh,
lot of information to
right. Oh
share
my
that
gosh,
we
you're totally
probably
right.
can't get
Okay,
through.
you're right.
Yeah, yeah, but we can always do episode part 2
Oh
because
yeah,
I
there's so
really
much
appreciate
actually.
you giving us so many tools. Um, I would absolutely think that, like, at least one of the tools that you shared, someone could implement, say, going into Thanksgiving dinner, grounding, checking in with themselves, or realizing that they're dysregulated mid-meal, excusing themselves to the restroom, and just kind of practicing checking in with themselves and placing a hand on them, feeling
Mhm.
their breath and just regulating in some way. Um, any kind of final tips or suggestions or any kind of inspiration to leave us for how to implement these during the holidays?
Well, try them out when you're not activated.
Great tip.
Because that is, you don't want to just do it for the first time when you're activated, because that it can be harder to access. So if you
Yes,
practice something beforehand, then your body will be able to access it more easier when you are activated. So
perfect.
give them a go in advance, see what feels right for you, and also know that like these are all suggestions. It's so important to do what resonates with your heart and your spirit. And every human being is different. So there may be something that really resonated with you and you want to try it out, go for it. And maybe something you're like, that's not my jam, but I really know that this helps me. And we may not have even discussed that on this show.
Yeah,
And that is
yeah,
a-okay too,
yeah.
because it's all about your journey. And it kind of circles back to what we talked about in the beginning of our talk, is that society will have certain like, oh, this is the expectations, but really we are the one that's cultivating our own experience. And so honoring those pieces as you're going through the holidays and leaning into joy and what works for you.
Beautiful. I love that. That's very inspiring. I appreciate it. Well, thank
Thank
you
you,
so much
Ilona.
for being on. And I definitely sense an episode part 2 coming because I know you've got a lot more wisdom to share. And thank you so much for giving us practical tools, giving us the reasoning behind it for the people that want to know why it works and then how it works. And how can people find you if they want to learn more about you or your work?
Yes, I am on Instagram as
Okay, perfect.
Elizabeth Giselle,
Perfect.
ELIZABETH, GSELLMFT.
Perfect.
And I will be having my own website in early 2025.
Perfect.
That's being worked on right now, and it's
Amazing.
launching in 2025. So if you, in the near future, next year, they can look up my name and it should be popping up soon.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you again so much. I really appreciate it and have a
Okay.
wonderful holiday season.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.